Once upon a time, in a beautiful, snowy kingdom, nestled between icy mountains and glittering forests, there lived a kind-hearted queen. The land sparkled with white snow all year round, and the people adored their gentle queen who ruled with wisdom and warmth. Yet, despite her riches and loving husband, the queen longed for one thing her heart desired most: a daughter. One winter afternoon, while sitting by her window framed with ebony wood, the queen was sewing. As she worked, she pricked her finger with the needle, and a single drop of blood fell on the snow-covered sill. Gazing at the red drop on the white snow, she whispered a wish. "I wish for a child with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony." To her joy, her wish was granted. A baby girl was born, and they named her Snow White, for her skin was as pale and flawless as the winter snow. The queen was overjoyed, holding her precious child with tearful happiness. But as the days passed, her health began to fade. With a heavy heart, she kissed Snow White goodbye, whispering her love, before quietly slipping into an eternal sleep. After years of loneliness, the aging king remarried. His new queen was breathtakingly beautiful, with eyes like ice and a voice as smooth as silk. But beneath her elegant grace lay a heart full of vanity and cruelty. She brought with her a mysterious object, an enchanted mirror hidden deep within her chambers. Each morning, the queen would stand before it and whisper, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" At first, the mirror always gave the answer she longed for: "You are my queen." Emboldened by her beauty, the queen ruled with cold authority. The once cheerful castle fell silent. Servants tiptoed through its halls, afraid to speak above a whisper. Smiles faded, laughter vanished. Meanwhile, the king's daughter, Snow White, blossomed into a gentle and graceful young girl. With each passing day, her beauty and kindness grew brighter, like sunshine piercing through the queen's long shadow. She spoke with kindness, treated everyone with respect, and filled the castle with a quiet warmth the queen could not extinguish. And so, deep in her cold heart, the queen began to feel something new: fear. Fear that one day the mirror's answer might change. One day, the queen stood before her enchanted mirror, expecting the same reassuring words, but instead, it whispered a chilling truth: Snow White is the fairest of them all. A cold silence filled the room as jealousy twisted into rage. The queen's pride shattered like glass. Her beauty had been her power, and now it was threatened by a mere girl. Consumed by envy, she summoned the royal huntsman. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with fury. "Take Snow White into the forest," she commanded, her tone icy, "and do not let her return." The huntsman bowed, torn between duty and dread. Snow White's fate now hung in the balance, and deep within the shadows of the forest, the queen's betrayal would unfold. Snow White, cheerful and full of wonder, skips beside the huntsman, unaware of the queen's wicked plan. The deep forest swallows them in shadows, but she trusts him, humming softly as birds flutter overhead. When they reach a clearing, he halts. Slowly, he draws his knife. Snow White turns, puzzled. Her wide, innocent eyes meet his, full of trust. His hands tremble. The weight of the queen's command clashes with the purity of the girl before him. He cannot do it. With a pained cry, the huntsman drops to his knees. "Run," he whispers urgently. "Run far and never return to the castle." Snow White stares, confused, then turns and flees into the unknown. The huntsman watches her go, then stains his hands with a wild boar's blood, returning to the queen with a lie. Deeper and deeper into the forest, Snow White runs, branches tearing at her dress. As night falls, glowing eyes peer from the darkness. Strange sounds echo. Fear grips her heart. Tears roll down her cheeks as she curls beneath a tree, cold and alone. Crickets sing lullabies in the shadows. Exhausted, she drifts into sleep, unaware her story has just begun. Morning light poured through the trees as the forest awakened with the cheerful songs of birds, the sweet aroma of pine mixed with the fresh dew, and animals of all kinds, deer, rabbits, and chipmunks, gathered around Snow White, their gentle eyes full of concern and care. With soft nudges and quiet encouragement, they led her through winding forest paths, deeper into the woods. There, nestled among thick trees and wildflowers, stood a quaint little cottage. Ivy crawled up its stone walls, and smoke curled gently from the chimney. Snow White's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she stepped onto the creaky porch and peered inside. The cottage was warm but untidy. Everything inside was small. Tiny chairs, a miniature table set with unwashed dishes, and 7 little beds all in a row. Dust coated the shelves, and crumbs scat. Unable to keep her eyes open, she gently laid across the 7 beds, curling up for a much-needed rest, unaware of the surprises the evening would bring when the true owners of the cottage returned home. After a long day in the diamond mines, the 7 dwarfs trudged home, expecting the usual mess. But to their surprise, everything was spotless. The floors were swept, dishes sparkled, and a warm meal waited on the table. "Something's not right," muttered Grumpy, his brow furrowed. Quietly they crept upstairs and found a young girl, fast asleep across their beds. Startled, Snow White awoke to 7 wide-eyed faces peering at her. She gasped and pulled the blanket up, but the dwarfs quickly smiled to show they meant no harm. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to intrude." One by one, the dwarfs introduced themselves. Happy, Grumpy, Sleepy, Sneezy, Bashful, Doc, and Dopey. Snow White giggled at their names and felt at ease. She shared her sad story, how her stepmother, the Queen, had grown jealous and ordered her death. Moved by her kindness and bravery, the dwarfs huddled together and made a decision. "You can stay with us," said Doc. "We'll protect you." Snow White's eyes welled with tears of gratitude. The tiny cottage, once quiet and dusty, now felt like home. Back at the castle, the wicked queen once again stood before her magic mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "Snow White, living in the forest with the 7 dwarfs, is still the fairest of them all." Furious that Snow White had survived, the queen devised a wicked plan. She would disguise herself as an old peddler woman and visit the girl in secret. Working quickly, she brewed a potion to change her appearance and prepared a beautiful lace bodice. With it in hand, she made her way deep into the forest until she reached the dwarf's cottage. Snow White, seeing a harmless old woman, welcomed her kindly. The disguised queen spoke sweetly and offered to lace Snow White's bodice as a gift. Trusting her, Snow White agreed. But the bodice was tied so tightly that Snow White gasped and fainted on the spot. Later, the dwarfs returned home and found her unconscious. Acting swiftly, they loosened the bodice, and Snow White slowly began to breathe again. Though safe this time, danger still lingered nearby. The evil queen, furious that Snow White still lived, brewed a new plan. This time, she disguised herself as an old peddler woman and crafted a magical comb laced with poison. Carrying her basket, she knocked gently on the dwarf's cottage door. "Pretty girl, "Let me sell you something special," she said sweetly. Snow White, curious and forgetting the warning, opened the window. "Just look, dear, no harm in that," coaxed the Queen, handing her the shiny comb. Snow White took it and brushed her hair. Instantly, she collapsed. Luckily, the dwarves returned just in time. They removed the comb, and Snow White slowly awoke. "This is your second chance," they warned. "Never open the door again." The evil Queen, furious that Snow White still lived, devised one final and sinister plan. She turned to her darkest magic and crafted a poisoned apple, gleaming red, flawless, and deadly. With a wicked grin, she disguised herself as an old peddler woman, her voice raspy, her back hunched, her eyes gleaming with malice. Wandering deep into the forest, she reached the dwarf's cottage, where Snow White was alone, humming as she swept the floor. The Queen knocked gently on the door and offered the beautiful apple as a gift, claiming it held magical powers to grant any wish. Snow White, kind and trusting, hesitated but was finally tempted by the apple's perfect shine. She took a bite. At once, her eyes widened, the apple slipped from her fingers, and she collapsed to the floor, still as stone. When the dwarfs returned, they were devastated. No matter how they tried, she would not wake. Believing she was gone forever, they gently placed her in a glass coffin and carried it deep into the forest. There, surrounded by blooming flowers and whispering trees, the animals gathered in mourning. Birds wept in song, deer bowed their heads, and the forest grew silent in sorrow. Snow White lay untouched by time, peaceful and beautiful, as the forest grieved the loss of its purest heart. One bright morning, a young prince was riding through the forest, taking the same path where he had once seen a beautiful girl by the river, a girl who had never left his thoughts. As he passed the clearing where the dwarfs lived, he noticed a glass coffin surrounded by 7 sorrowful little men. Curious and concerned, he drew closer. There, inside the coffin, lay Snow White, still and silent, yet as lovely as ever. The prince instantly recognized her, his heart aching with sadness. Overcome with emotion, he gently leaned down and kissed her. At that very moment, the dark spell shattered. Snow White's eyes fluttered open, and she drew her first breath in what felt like forever. The dwarfs gasped with joy and danced around the clearing. Birds sang sweetly, and the trees swayed as if to join the celebration. Snow White smiled at the prince, and in that magical moment, they both knew their hearts belonged to each other. News of her awakening spread across the land. Far away, the evil queen looked into her mirror one last time, but it cracked down the middle and fell silent forever. The prince brought Snow White to his kingdom, where they were married in a grand celebration. Peace and happiness followed them always. And so, the kind princess who once wandered alone in the woods became a beloved queen. With a heart full of love and courage, she ruled with grace and wisdom. Her tale of kindness, hope, and true love was told for generations, reminding all that even the darkest curse can be broken by a pure heart.